All right, good morning and welcome to the Accreditation Audit June Committee for this year. I am Dr. Melissa Diebel and I help oversee this process. We have the committee members with us today and we have a pretty full agenda. So I just want to welcome everyone and thank you all for taking the time to meet for this very crucial meeting. I know that the Ed Prep folks are always very, very happy when this meeting is behind them because it means that decisions have been made regarding their programs and accreditation, and typically that affects their fall. So they're very excited to have this behind them. So I will turn this over to Dr. Faye Dieter, the chair, and she will run us through our agenda. So I will mute. Come on if you have questions or anything like that. And I will admit people at the times that I told them. So we may end up with people in the lobby. They're going to just wait a second until it's their time to come in. So Faye, I'll hand that over to you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. We are going to begin with the approval of the December minutes for December 13th, 2023. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. Those were in the folder that Melinda provided for us. Did anyone see any corrections or anything? I guess first we need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And thank you, Jennifer, for going to ask. Did anyone see anything that needed to be corrected on the minutes? I didn't either. Okay, I'll go ahead and call for the vote then on the minutes. And since I think we can all just raise your hand or say aye, unmute yourself and say aye to vote on those. That's okay, isn't it, Melissa, for the minutes? Or do we need to go person by person?
Nope, you can do it as a group, but Kevin, I'll need you to turn on your camera so they can just see your hand going up.
Or unmute and say aye. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, I think that was everybody. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And then the next item for business on the agenda is to set the date for the December 2024 meeting for the AAC. We usually do that, I think it's right before the December board meeting, correct, Melissa? So unfortunately, I'm on my laptop, so I don't have my big monitor here. It's not easy to look at all the open windows, but the December
so the first week of December is usually not great for EPPs, so we will forgo the first week. So December 9th through the 13th is typically the week that we have done that. So the 9th is a Monday and the 13th is a Friday. Would there be a day that week that would work?
I would say earlier in the week is better for me.
Can we go with a Tuesday, the 10th? Monday
Sure.
Meetings are always a little rough and I can send a reminder. So we'll set it for December 10th. Does 9 a.m. work?
Yeah.
We've done it in the afternoon before. Just checking.
How many are on that agenda?
That one, I don't know that right now we have any, because I think there are 2 CAPE, but they wouldn't be until spring. So I think this agenda is hitting up all of the others because AQUIP are the ones we can vote on early. So right now we actually don't have anything, but I'll have to double check.
So this could either be really short or not even needed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the 9 is fine.
And you'll send out like a calendar invite so it gets reserved on people's schedules.
I will do that.
So we don't have a reschedule
shortly.
again.
Yes, I will do
Please.
that shortly. Okay. The date is set.
Awesome.
Faye, are you ready for me to allow Alice Lloyd College in?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little ahead of schedule. I'm perfectly fine with that. Is everybody else good? Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Now the site chair, I don't see him in the lobby yet.
Oh, should we wait on him then?
but Dr. Sloan is here for Alice Lloyd College as the chair of that institution. And I know she has a statement prepared for the committee, and then Dr. Faulkner was the site visit chair, and so he'll be available. And if he's not, I can certainly address. I sit on all of them, so I can help answer any additional questions and stuff if he is not here.
Okay.
But we
can. I was going to say, can we go ahead and let Dr. Sloan begin her presentation, or do we need to wait for Dr. Faulkner?
Well, since we're a little ahead, maybe we could give him just a few minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Here is Sean. Yay.
Making an entrance.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. We're rescheduled and everybody got here, so that's exciting. I'm going to mute myself, and Faye, I'll let you or ask for introductions and all that fun stuff. So.
Okay, great. All right. We'll start by just letting, I'm going to have the committee introduce themselves to the EPP and our site team leader, and then I will ask them to introduce themselves. So I'll go ahead and start. I'm Faye Dieters. I'm the AAC chair. I serve as the chair of teacher education at Midway University, and also a site team lead for CAPE. So pretty familiar with the accreditation process on both sides. So I've kind of been where you are if you are a site team leader, and I've also been where you are if you are the EPP leader. So I feel you on both ends. And then I'll just go to Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Bay Williams. I'm at the University of Louisville, currently serving as the interim dean of academic affairs. So I've overseen our accreditation. We're on the ballot later. Yes, that's it. That's all I understand about accreditation. And I've been on this committee now for, I think, 2 years, Faye?
Yes.
Or is this my, right. Since 2022 anyways.
Yeah. Okay, Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Bradley. I am the member at large on this committee, and I was just trying to think how many years I've been on this committee, and I said to Melissa that I think I'm on my 4th commissioner now. So a few minutes.
Yeah, I think you've been on it longer than I have, Danny.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Daly. I'm a middle school social studies teacher in Boone County. So I'm here. Hey, Dr. Faulkner. So yeah, I think this is my 2nd meeting total. So I've got some time to catch up with Danny.
Yes, you do. But welcome. We're happy to have you. Okay, I'll go ahead and let Dr. Sloan introduce herself.
Let me find my mic button. Hi, I am Katrina Sloan. I am the division chair, the education division chair at Alice Lloyd College.
Nice to meet you. Good morning. And Dr. Faulkner.
My name is Sean Faulkner, and I'm a professor at Northern Kentucky University, and I'm also a CAPE site visitor. And I was the chair of the targeted visit.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for being here so early, especially those of you who are visiting from your vacations this morning at various locations around the country. I'm going to let Dr. Sloan begin with her presentation for the committee this morning. If you would go ahead, Dr. Sloan.
All right. Well, first off, I would like to thank our accreditation committee and Dr. Diebel for their time and work that they put into visiting and talking with us at Alice Lloyd. Their recommendations are helping us to develop and improve our program at ALC. So the recommendations from our original accreditation team were mostly concerning CAPE Standard 5. And one of the things that we figured out was that we were using an outdated QAS that really didn't lend itself to the work that we were trying to do. And so the first order of business for us was to develop a QAS that does work for us and that organizes and formalizes our work. As a small college, and some of you understand that, it's easy to do things casually and not really kind of formalize them in a way that helps us to keep track of the decisions that we make and the effect of those decisions. So developing our new QAS has helped us to implement formal processes to analyze our data and to track the changes and their effects. A key piece of that process outlined in our new QAS is our annual data retreat. So our data retreat this year took place after the team completed their report. And this wasn't our first one. This is actually our third data retreat. But at this meeting, we really looked at that QAS and analyzed our data according to that and made recommendations for our programs based on that analysis. And so the QAS really, like I said, this is our third data retreat. The QAS really brought it together and really helped to create the agenda for that and helped to keep us on track and really looking at the data that we had and how we could use that information to improve our programs. So our focus this year was on our middle and high school science and social studies programs. Last year, we really focused on elementary. For those programs, we recommended that the methods courses for those content areas be a part of the required coursework. Previously, our elementary and middle school social studies and high school and science programs did not have those. They had general methods courses like pedagogy and that, but we found that looking at things like the observations, that they weren't really using specific strategies specific to their content areas when we were observing them. And so having them take those methods courses specific to their content would be we felt like would help with that. So the recommendations that we made are being shared with our stakeholders for feedback, and then they will go through our academic affairs to be finalized. And so through things like our QAS and the setup of how we make our decisions, how we look at our data, we feel like it's because our systems are becoming more systematic and formalized. We also continue to collect data on completer impact for this for Standard 4. We decided that the way we would do that is to observe and interview alumni teachers and their principals because we weren't being very successful at getting data through surveys. We weren't getting information back. So we did two alumni, students, and principal interviews previously, and then this semester or this year we did two more. There wasn't, just being 4 folks that we've interviewed, that wasn't really enough data to make decisions for our program improvement, but we did discuss it at our data retreat, and some questions arose from it that we want to continue exploring. And one of those was we noticed that setting instructional outcomes and looking at and having knowledge of each of our students and using that knowledge in our planning for the, in planning for the instruction were issues. And so one of the questions that we want to address is how can we model those things in our courses and look for them in practicum and student teaching observations. So that's something that we're looking at and exploring and diving more deeply into based on the information that we got back. Working with stakeholder focus groups is part of our QAS as well. And this summer we again met. This is again the second time that we've done this. But we met with groups consisting of superintendents, supervisors, and principals in 3 of our partner districts. We discussed formalizing the processes for placing our practicum students and our student teachers. and ways in which the districts can provide feedback on our programs and practices. We shared our teacher observation and our lesson plan format with each district in order to get feedback on those instruments. One piece of advice that we got from pretty much every district was to develop some sort of a crosswalk between the Danielson framework and our observation instrument, so that our students, the mentor and cooperating teachers, the principals, and the administration of our districts and our faculty can see the links, because there is some concern that our students are being observed on one instrument in college and then they're flipping to another instrument. But once they really took a look at our instrument, they saw some of those connections, but they just kind of wanted those laid out. And so we felt like that was something that we could do that would be helpful. So all of the processes, the notes, the data that we have been talking about in our data retreat and collecting has been added to our implementation log, which is now a part of our QAS. It helps us keep track of what we've done and what we've learned. One of our biggest struggles is making sure that our data demonstrates sufficiency criteria. And as a small school with a small population of students, just a few professors, and even a small stakeholder group, it's sometimes difficult to have enough data or enough scores to test for reliability and validity. Sometimes we may only have 2 students go through a program in 5 years, or we may only have 1 faculty member observing student teachers, and so it's hard to see if that matches up to anybody else. So we would like to develop partnerships with other small EPPs and maybe work together on creating some instruments and establishing sufficiency criteria for this.
Thank you, Dr. Sloan. Dr. Faulkner, would you like to go ahead and share your report as a site visit chair, please?
Absolutely. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
I'm not sure. I'm still trying to find all of my buttons in Teams. So I didn't want to talk for 5 minutes and then realize you couldn't hear me. It was our pleasure to have our site visit with the folks at ALC. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Petrosi and Dr. Holland, who were also on the team as members of the team for this targeted visit. The targeted visit was, our task was to specifically look at Standard 5. And all of us know that Standard 5, it's very difficult to target Standard 5 without crisscrossing through all of the other standards. So we found ourselves at different times saying, well, this is really a Standard 4 issue, or this is a Standard 3, or this is whatever. And so we tried to keep ourselves focused, looking at the quality assurance system and how it was being implemented and to what extent it had been implemented. I think from Dr. Sloan's presentation, you can see that over the last 2.5 to 3 years that they have put in a significant amount of work with a very small number of people. And that was evident with the team that did the targeted visit. Things that what we noticed was in the original AFIs and stipulations where it said that certain things did not exist, like the quality assurance system, we were able to come back and say that yes, they do in fact exist on some level now. They are there, they are in place. The institution is working very hard to implement the new plan that they have put in place. They are collecting data. Were we able to erase all of those AFIs and stipulations at this point? Absolutely not. And we've had those conversations with Dr. Sloan because they're in the beginning stages. A lot of the focus of their work so far has been on developing the system, beginning to implement the system, A lot of their data initially, when we did our visit, a lot of their data analysis had focused around the Praxis scores, but it sounds like they have now been able to collect additional data for their data retreats. And also, in addition to that data, they were doing a lot of curriculum alignment. And so when we had our visit, they had done, the focus of their work was around the elementary program. And so now this year they have moved forward and they are looking at their middle and secondary programs. So even since our visit, they are making some additional strides to move their plan forward. So that's good to hear. We saw several other good things that one would want to see in not only just the written quality assurance system, but they had established the data retreats where they were looking at the data they had and identifying data that they needed, and they were designing ways to collect that data, and they were also in the process of redesigning instruments so that they could collect the data that they needed. So they were working hard at doing that. And I think something that was very important to their plan was the establishment of their teacher education committee. We did have conversations about that, and we spoke to members of that group because it did include not only members from their division of education, but also those that are from their arts and sciences divisions, as well as external stakeholders. So the membership of that committee seems to be the correct group of people now to have the right conversations. So when we take a look at the work that they have done, we were able to make some changes to the AFIs and to the stipulations. Some of the AFIs remained, although we were able to note that there were areas of progress. There were some stipulations that were changed to AFIs because they no longer, the institution no longer, for example, had no quality assurance system. They now do have one, and it is being implemented. And so for us as a committee, the key now is continued implementation. And really, from our viewpoint, the ball was in ALC's court at this point. How is that implementation going to continue between now and 2027, 2028? And will they follow through with that? One concern that did arise in our conversations, that it's difficult because we were focused on standard 5. It does come up in one of the AFIs, I believe it's number 4 on the AFIs that were retained, where it said the EPP lacked data and analysis for completer impact. Dr. Sloan mentioned this one when she was talking about the interviews and observations in classrooms. There wasn't a good place for us to really mention or address this beyond this AFI because of our focus, but just making sure that you have a really clear plan for standard 4, because it crisscrosses with standard 5 in this AFI. It may go beyond an observation or interviews, but just that might be a piece of it, but just making sure that you have a really clear plan and that you're addressing all parts of standard 4 as you're developing your plans for standard 4 and 5, that you're getting all parts of that. But the committee as a whole saw a lot of progress. And I was on the initial accreditation team for this one, so I was able to see that that progress myself personally. And a lot of formalization of processes that, just like Dr. Sloan said, formalization that was not there initially. So that's what we saw, and it looks like some good things are happening.
Thank you, Dr. Faulkner. Dr. Sloan, do you have do you have any comments or any response that you wanted to make before I open it up to the committee for questions?
No, we agree with everything that the committee has found. I mean, we knew the issues and we are working on them, and we appreciate the help to get those right.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up at this point for committee members to ask any questions that you have. Does anyone on the committee have a question you'd like to ask at this point? See any hands or anything? And I don't have any questions either on this one. Okay, if none of the committee members have any questions, then we will go ahead and, oh, did somebody say something? No? Okay. I'll go ahead then and we will start voting. We're going to begin by voting on the question of, does the AAC agree with the areas for improvement or stipulations that were identified in the site visit report, noting that we should consider the subsequent evidence that was presented by the EPP in the rejoinder, as well as the lead response to the rejoinder and the EPP presentation during the meeting this morning. So I'm going to begin with Jeannie and our response for, do you agree with the areas for improvement or stipulations identified in the site visit report? Yes or no?
So you're asking about on our vote sheet item number 2.
Item number 1. Do you
Item
agree
number 1.
with?
Yes.
Do you agree with the areas for improvement? Okay, yes, thank you. And Danny?
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you. And I also agree with the areas for improvement and stipulations that were identified in the site visit report. Okay, the second item that we will be voting on is standard 5, and we will be voting on whether standard 5 was met with AFIs and or stipulations, or not met. Jenny?
Met with AFIs and or stipulations.
Danny?
Met with AFIs under stipulations.
Kevin?
Met with AFIs and or stipulations.
Thank you. And I also vote met with AFIs and or stipulations. Okay, and then our final area to vote on for ALC is accreditation. Our options are continued accreditation, which their revisit will be in spring of 2028. Continued accreditations with conditions with the revisit in spring of 2028. We would be specifying what those conditions would be, which could include whatever the committee would recommend to the Education Professional Standards Board, which could be regular check-ins, 6 months follow-up, whatever, or to revoke accreditations. I'm going to begin with Jenny.
Before you start voting on that, I guess I would have a question of Dr. Sloan, if I could.
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Do you think?
Actually, sorry, hold on, Danny. Just Faye, I know this is a new one. So when we clarified, we can only vote on continued accreditation or revoke for a.
Oh, we
for
can't
a
do conditions on this one.
Since she had the probation, yep, they said that we can. That's something for 5010 that we can look at, but the only options are continued or revoke.
Thank you for clarifying that on this one, Melissa.
Okay, that may.
Yeah, Danny.
nullify
So
my
now we
question.
have two options. All right, go ahead.
I
Okay,
was
and the
just
two
wondering-
options are accreditation or revoke.
Revoke accreditation, continue
Sorry.
or revoke. Go ahead, Danny.
I don't think my question's valid anymore. I was just gonna ask Dr. Sloan if she felt that a checkup sooner than 2028 would be of help to them.
Well, like I say, it may not be it may be irrelevant now. Honestly, I feel like we have this. Sean was talking about, it's kind of the ball is in our court, and I feel like our QAS lays it out now for what we need to do and when we need to do it, and so we have those guideposts along the way. So I'm not saying that it wouldn't be helpful. Any feedback is helpful to me. I feel like any help we can get is amazing. But I feel like we really do have this in terms of adding our data, using our data, and we have those guideposts along the way to kind of help us do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll say on behalf of the state that Dr. Sloan is very good about reaching out. We've had many meetings, so I will throw that her way. She's good at reaching out and asking for additional help should she need it.
Yeah, I think I've probably helped everybody on this, or asked everybody on this committee for help at one point or another.
Then I didn't hear, did Jenny vote already?
No, so
Okay.
I guess we're ready now, Jenny.
Continued accreditation.
Okay. Danny,
Continued accreditation.
Kevin,
Continued accreditation.
and I also vote for continued accreditation. Okay, thank
Yay!
you.
Can I dance now?
Yes. And enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. I will
Congratulations,
now.
Dr. Sloan.
Thank you guys
Good
so much.
work.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
it.
you all. And thank you,
I'm
Dr.
gonna go count
Faulkner,
the
for
camper now.
chairing again.
Bye. Thank you.
That's always a lot of work. Okay, I guess we have a break on the agenda after this one. And thank you. I don't know if you told me before. I knew on the other one that we had a different,
Maybe I had the wrong thing in the vote sheet, because remember, we were going through all these things and having to get them fixed.
I may have not downloaded the correct, because I had already downloaded them and then I tried to go back and download the right vote sheets, but I may have not downloaded a new one for Alice Floyd. So that might have been on me. I know I downloaded a new one on.
Well, we were in the weeds on these accreditation decisions. So I can double check, if you want to, we can always double check before we do the vote.
I was going to say, I will just make sure. I know I downloaded another one, the last one today, but I will go back and make sure I downloaded new vote sheets for everybody else too. I just did not, I don't think I did for Alice Lloyd. So I probably just didn't have downloaded the right vote sheet because I had already downloaded them all last week. We thought we were meeting before, so.
Yes. Okay, so if everybody needs to get a cup of coffee, use the restroom, whatever. I did invite Simmons College is next. They're going to be a new ed prep. So they have not had an existing program, so they won't have data and all of that, but they have put together, as you saw, lots and lots and lots of data, including syllabi for every course they plan to teach. So they definitely got all of that stuff in there. I've told them they can join us at 10:25. So you are welcome to come back at 10:30, but I just wanted to let you know they might be in here when you come back. So.
Okay, and on this one, I will start with their site visit chair, which I normally do.
And that is Dr. Gibson. So.
Dr. Gibson. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we will start by introducing ourselves to the institution and to our site visit chair, and then we will also have them introduce themselves. So I will start. I am Dr. Faye Dieters. I am the current chair of teacher education at Midway University, small private institution here in Kentucky. I am also a Cape site team visitor and lead visitor. And so I have operated on both sides of this process. And then I will move it on to Jenny.
Hello, Simmons. I was on Simmons site visit team. Thank you, Melissa. That turned out to be just one of the best days of my spring, sincerely. And as you know, I'm the interim associate dean at the University of Louisville, and I'm on this committee.
Thank you. And then Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Bradley. I'm from Woodford County, and I'm the member at large on this committee.
Thank you. Kevin.
Hey y'all, I'm Kevin Daly. I'm the 2024 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and I'm a middle school social studies teacher in Boone County, Kentucky.
Thank you, and congratulations on Teacher of the Year. And then I will move on to the EPP. Dr. Yates, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Lucian Yates III. I'm the Distinguished Chair of Education at Simmons College of Kentucky, and I've had the privilege of working with a wonderful team to develop this program.
Wonderful. And is that your team that I see in the?
That's it. That's the team.
Group?
Absolutely.
Okay. Hi,
Absolutely.
team.
That's the team.
Okay. Wonderful. And then Dr. Gibson.
Yes, Barry Gibson. I was privileged to be on the team, and I'm glad to report today. I'm a professor of teacher education at Boyce College in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And we are going to start with the site team report from Dr. Gibson. If you are ready.
I'm ready. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, good morning. I had the privilege, as I just said, of being part of the site visit team at Simmons College in March. And so a brief overview of our report. Simmons College hosted us in the building that's dedicated to their EPP, which was a huge impression on me at the beginning, that this institution had made such an investment in this prospective EPP. The space was beautiful. It was filled with state-of-the-art classrooms that had been equipped for teaching, interactive teaching and such. A well-equipped library already with a huge collection of books and curricula for pre-service teachers, student success center, a recruitment office for the program, all of that housed in this building. And then we were able to hear from and ask questions to the president, Dr. Cosby. Several administrators were there, and even some external stakeholders outside of the institution, as well as Dr. Yates and his faculty and staff, which to me showed such solidarity for not only the school, not only Simmons College, but also just their support of the EPP that's being proposed and their support for its mission moving forward. The program development itself for what they are proposing was mapped out well in terms of progression for their students. The Simmons EPP is designed with 4 gateways to ensure systematic and sufficient preparation for their prospective students and pre-service teachers. A number of key assessment instruments and data collection processes are in place to provide ample opportunities and evidence of student learning and proficiency as they matriculate through the program. With those instruments, a number of validity and reliability tests were employed and are employed to ensure the soundness of these instruments and their process moving forward with data collection and evidence. In anticipation for any remediation needs and support for their pre-service teachers, an academic success coach has already been put in place to aid students and to provide strategies and support for success. At the end of the site visit report that you have provided, some recommendations and next steps have been outlined for Simmons College EPP, but most of these are fairly minor and easily accomplished by their team. Overall, the site visit was, I think, very evidentiary of their really not only the support that they have from all of the team and administrators of the institution, but all the hard work and all of the time that has been put in to preparing for this moment, and Lord willing, the fall is just amazing to me. And so on behalf of the site visit team, I want to thank Dr. Yates and his team for just their generosity. They were so hospitable to us, and for all the hard work that they've put in and are going to put in for this program to succeed. So that's the conclusion of my overview, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Does any of the committee have any questions for Dr. Gibson at this point?
I don't think so, but I do have a question for Dr. Yates if he's going to present next.
He is going to present next. Do you want to wait till he presents, or do you want to ask before?
I'll ask before.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just hoping that you can tell me a little bit about Simmons as a whole and kind of how you guys got to this point in your process.
Sure, I was going to do that in the presentation to give a brief history of Simmons and how we got to where we are and where we intend to go from here.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I will let you just go ahead and get started then, Dr. Yates.
Okay, we're going to share the slide, share the screen, TJ. Melissa, can he share the, there we go, there we go. Okay, so the Simmons Teacher Education Program, and let me just give you a brief history of Simmons, okay? Next slide. Here's what we plan to do, to look at a brief history of Simmons, how we got to where we are, the mission of Simmons, the institutional learning goals, the mission and vision of our EPP, the design of the EPP, the unique features, and we'll answer any questions that you might have that we might not answer in the presentation itself. Simmons was started right after the Civil War by the General Association of Colored Baptists in Kentucky. It was originally called the Kentucky Normal and Theological Institution. It was first based in Frankfort, Kentucky, and then they decided to move it to Louisville. One of the early presidents was a man by the name of William J. Simmons. And he had been trained at Howard University, and what he wanted to do is make Simmons the Howard of the South. Its programs included teacher education, medicine, law, music, business, and all of those kinds of things. In 1919, it became Simmons University, and it had a full-fledged medical school, law school, and teacher education. In fact, one of the first cases fought by the NAACP at the Supreme Court was argued by a law graduate from Simmons College of Kentucky. And we had a medical school. There were 7 medical schools at historically Black colleges in the United States. And after Abraham Flexner did what he did with medical education and solidified and standardized medical education, 5 of those lost their accreditation and only 2 are left, and those are Meharry and Nashville and Howard. In 1930, at the Depression, Simmons defaulted on a $78,000 loan on some of its buildings, and it lost its entire institution. All of its programs was subsumed by the University of Louisville, the Negro division of the University of Louisville, called Municipal College. And the only program left at Simmons was theological training. So in 1930, it became known as Simmons Bible College. In 2005, the current president, Kevin W. Cosby, became the president, and he wanted to restore Simmons to its original mission, that of law, medicine, and education. So that's how we got to where we are now. I had retired and was retired for 21 days when he came to me and said, come and help me develop a teacher education program. And we know it usually takes 3 to 5 years to do that. But with the help of this team that I have and some corporate partners and so forth, we were able to do it. I thought in 3, but Melissa reminded me from the time we got started, it was about 2 years that we developed this. Next slide. So Simmons currently is operated into 3 colleges or 3 schools: the School of Foundational Studies, the School of Arts and Sciences, and the School of Professional Studies. We fall in the School of Professional Studies because it's a licensure program. So our mission of Simmons College of Kentucky is to create an institution devoted through biblical higher education to educated people to be strong academic professional programs that can produce productive citizens in the urban context. Okay, so our mission is specific to how do we make the urban context better. Next slide. There are 5 institutional learning outcomes. We want to equip each student with what they need to know for their particular areas and the cultural context. We want to produce students who are lifelong learners. And all this is rooted in a biblical interpretation and context. We want to have a bent towards social justice, and whatever students choose for our institution, we want them to go out and be productive and show excellence in their chosen area of study. Now, so our mission of the EPP it is the same as the institution. We can go to the next slide. So our mission of the EPP is to produce dynamic professional educators who can work for the good of the profession, their students, their community, and use inquiry and contemplation and field-based experiences to fulfill this whole notion of teaching and learning, again, in this urban context. Next slide. And so the vision, consistent with Simmons' vision, is to produce teachers as a change agent. And so we want them to have the content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, communication, to be able to identify and help students along this matriculation in schools. Next. So our conceptual framework, like I said, is teacher is change agent. And there are 5 pillars that we want to look at as we develop these candidates into excellent professional educators. First of all and foremost, they must have the content and pedagogical knowledge. And we will make sure that that happens in the foundational phase as well as the teacher education phase to make sure that they have those skills necessary to teach all students. They must be culturally competent. In other words, great teachers must be able to understand, value, and be able to teach all students, regardless of their zip codes, regardless of their race or ethnicity, what language they speak in the home, All of those things, we have to teach them how to be culturally competent if they're going to be the change agent that we want them to be. They must have critical thinking skills and communication skills. That's one of those institutional learning outcomes that we have for the entire institution, and we will ensure and do checks along the way, or as Madeline Hunter called it, dipsticking, to make sure there's oil in the engine as we go along throughout the program. And again, like I said, we have this bent towards social justice, that we want to make sure that our kids are able to teach all kids regardless of where they come from. And of all this is done in a biblical worldview. Next. Now, here are some things about our teacher education program, or our EPP, that I think sets us apart or makes us a little different from others. As all institutions, we will make sure that we meet all of those Kentucky law or national standards that we require of all students. And that's around those clinical hours. It's around making sure that they understand the standards. And our quality assurance plan, as Madeline Hunter says, we take these dipsticks along the way to make sure that they're going where they need to go. All of our students, before they student teach, must have Google One certification. And as we go into these online learning methodologies and NTOs and all this, we have to make sure that, NTIs, I'm sorry, we have to make sure that our students are able to teach online. So we are creating a digital teaching laboratory where students can do their practice teaching in front of a screen, and then we're able to critique it and so forth to make sure that they are able to make those impacts on K-12 students as we want them to make. All of our students will have to have pro-ethica training. I am sick and tired of picking up professional journals, newspapers, and so forth, where there's been some lapse in ethical judgment on teachers' part. So we want to do everything that we can to make sure that our students make good decisions when they're out there working with students. We're going to use Merzian technology. It's a technology that uses AI to train teachers before they go out into the fields. It's almost like in nursing where they use, I call them the dummies, and my nursing person when I was at Kentucky State said, don't call them dummies, they're mannequins. So you can program a classroom where kids misbehave. So the candidate must learn how to extinguish bad behavior, to move kids on, and so forth. It's a wonderful technology that's just developing, but we want to be on the front using that. All of our candidates must pass all of their certification exams prior to student teaching. So when they finish student teaching, they'll be eligible for certification. And the last thing, and I think Boyce does this as well, they must design, teach, and evaluate a teacher work sample. So working with their cooperating teacher, they have to design this work sample where they teach a series of lessons based on standards. They have to evaluate how well their candidates done and disaggregate data by subpopulations, and evaluate what they would do differently if they taught that lesson again. I was part of the program that designed the teacher work sample for the entire nation, and we want to make sure, because it's so powerful to have candidates look at how kids learn, the cultural context, and so forth as they move forward. So that's our teacher program, our EPP, from a glance. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to accept those at this particular time.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yates. Do committee members have questions at this time?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I have served on this committee for 6 years. I looked it up while we've been on here, and this may be the most exciting presentation that I have seen. All of them are wonderful, but having served on the Board of Education, I can tell you how needed programs like this are. To be able to have diversity in candidates and diversity in teachers is something that Kentucky hasn't done well. So I'm very excited for you and congratulate you on the work you've done so far.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that.
Hey, Dr. Yates, this is Kevin Daly. So I'm very new to this committee and this process. So it was really exciting to hear about your program. One of the things that was most compelling to me is the fact that you guys focus on an identity, cultural identity as an institution. And I think that that's like supremely important in terms of creating teachers who have sort of that core philosophy. And I think all of those components were fantastic. It's as teacher of the year, I've tried to work with institutions to help develop teachers, not just on the formal capacities as educators, knowing pedagogy and content and all of those, I call it the science of learning, but also to be that artist in the classroom, to make a place where everybody feels safe, comfortable, and able to learn. And I think the cultural responsiveness components of your program are really, really quite fantastic. I would love to learn from you guys. Sorry, this is a personal plug. I'd love to collaborate with you guys in any way that I can moving forward. But thank you for that. That was awesome.
We look forward to that, Mr. Daly. We have something in common. I was a social studies teacher too, a middle school social studies teacher. And in the state of Ohio, I was social studies teacher of the year, not the national teacher of the year, the state teacher of the year, but in social studies, I was a middle school social studies teacher of the year. And we will get in touch with you and let's do some things together.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Yates, I did have a few questions as I
Okay.
kind of looked through all of the materials for your program too. Mostly out of curiosity, I echo what everybody else has kind of said about your plan and your program as well. I love the identity that I saw strongly throughout your program proposal. I was curious as to, I know you were taking steps to hire additional faculty in support of launching the elementary program there at Simmons. I was curious as to what additional faculty you may have hired at this point to support that program. Have you been able to hire additional folks?
Sure. We have one lady, Dr. Annette Bridges. I think she's at the table. Dr. Bridges has a background in early childhood education, and she will teach some of our elementary education courses. We also have hired Dr. I can't think of her last name because I've been out for a while, but another person who's working on some state committees in the science of reading. So she will teach some of our reading classes. We will hire adjuncts to teach some of our specific courses, like in math methods and all of those areas. And we'll be looking for those folk that have those expertises. It may be a retired principal. It might be some other, those kinds of folks, but we will be casting the net further. Dr. Stovall, I'm sorry, her name was Kathy Stovall, who is with the science of reading. And she has an extensive background also in as a principal, as early childhood, and as elementary education. So those are the kinds of people we have hired and will be hiring in the future.
Okay, I was curious specifically about literacy, that being such an important area. That's
absolutely,
also
absolutely.
And
in fact,
my
if
area
you notice
too.
In our syllabi, when we wrote the language arts, not language arts, but teaching reading, the assessment of reading, as well as early children's lit, we also included in all of those the science of reading.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so that was one of my questions. I also was very interested when you talked in your proposal about steps that you have taken in terms of initiatives to address the teacher shortage, specifically in Jefferson County Public Schools, and working with them. Could you talk a little bit about some of those initiatives that you have either already undertaken or that you plan to undertake to address the teacher shortages there?
In the past, what we have done is with those candidates that couldn't pass the praxis, we've conducted practice workshops. We have financial partners who have said, you can do these kinds of things. So that's what we have done. For the last couple of years, we haven't done much because we've been so busy writing the program itself. But what we plan to do is to look at those non-certified people that are in classrooms working with candidates right now, as well as developing the full 4-year program. Right now, we have been approved by our accrediting body for an associate's degree in teacher education, and they will take the same courses that they will take in a 4-year program. And we have been approved for the Associates of Arts degree in early childhood education. And many of those people, once they get the associates, will move into the 4-year teacher education program. So it's a strategic step-by-step process that we have looked at to meet the needs of teachers, not only in Jefferson County, but for the entire state. And so we have hired a recruiter who is making inroads with the technical community college system, with other educational providers, going to schools and to conferences, working through, and this is our context, through churches to try to get people from all over the state into Simmons. One of the drawbacks that we had at Simmons is that we had not had a dormitory. So students from outside had to find their own housing and so forth. We just closed on a dormitory that we bought from Spalding. And this fall, we'll have our own 350-bed dormitory that we can bring students in, and they'll be safe, they'll be housed, they'll be fed, and so forth. So we're moving step by step, creating this institution here in the Louisville area. I hope that answered your question.
It did. It did.
Okay.
That's wonderful. I know that there is a terrific need there in Jefferson County in particular, but obviously, yes, we have that need all over the state. So,
Yeah.
And I was curious because I read that, but I wasn't sure exactly how you were doing that. But yeah.
In fact, Jefferson County has 6,200 teachers, 6,200. Only 700 are Black. Okay, and they have a need for over, I think it's about 400 teachers that are not certified in the district. So working with our partners at U of L, we all are trying to do what we can to make sure that they have excellent candidates in there that can work to make a difference in those students' lives.
Absolutely. Okay, and then my last question, as I was jotting notes, as I was looking through the program, I had referenced your table 2A2 on clinical experiences, and I was curious as I was looking at your chart about how the planned clinical experiences are structured to provide your teacher candidates experience with increasing responsibility in planning, instruction, that whole cycle of planning, instruction, and assessment so that they are prepared for teaching the entire class when they began student teaching. I loved the approach that you have where you're working closely with that mentoring and tutoring with the students and reading and that sort of thing. Also your use of immersion and those digital tools to help your students, coaching and those sorts of things to make sure that they're ready. But I was curious about how are you making sure that they've had that depth of experiences in planning, delivering that instruction, and then assessing and reflecting on that prior to student teaching. I wasn't quite sure how that was reflected in your clinical experiences.
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's a good one. with the teacher work sample, it's broken down into about 7 different areas, okay? And at each one of the methods courses, they have to show expertise in that area. So one is planning, one is looking at standards, how you're going to assess standards, so assessment is in there. So each one of those along the way is emphasized in those methods courses. So when they when they get to student teaching, they have had those experience in planning, developing, and executing each one of those lessons. So when they get to teaching, reading, and so forth, they might have to write a mini teacher work sample on how to teach reading. They might have to do it in the math or science methods courses and so forth. So it's not foreign to them when they get to student teaching. So it's incremental along the way in each one of those methods courses, and it builds on itself. So for instance, in the first teacher education course, Introduction to Teacher Education, okay, they have to go to a school and they have to look at the context of that school. They have to look at the classroom. What's the makeup of the classroom? What is the racial makeup? Are there other languages spoken there? You know, how many of the kids are from divorce? They have to look at the context of the classroom. Then they have to look at the context of the school, okay? What is, you know, how many special needs students do we have here? What other languages are spoken? All of those things of the school. Then they have to look at the community in which the school is located to see how all this fits together. Because the lesson that might work in school A won't work in school B because the context is different. So we start that very one with that. Then we go into the technology course and how did the teacher use technology? If you were the teacher, what would you have done differently? What about the setup of the classroom? Does that add to the learning in that classroom, or does it inhibit some things? And so students have to do that as well. So it's incremental in each one of those classes that they take, and the culmination is student teaching.
Okay, I think that's helpful. So as they get into those later courses, those later methods courses, they're moving more from observing and noting what the teacher is doing to practicing and doing it more themselves. Got it. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful. Okay, those were all of my questions. Anybody else on the committee have any other questions? Okay, then I think it is time to start voting. Okay, so the first question that we are going to vote on was the process followed for the development of establishing a new educator preparation provider that does not have a historical foundation from which to show the success of candidates or graduates as required in 16 KAR 5010 to gain temporary authority to admit candidates. And we learned from the presentation that there was a historical context way back a long time ago, just not recently. Our options for voting on this one are yes or no. And I'm going to begin with Jenny.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Danny.
Yes.
Okay, and Kevin.
Yes.
And then I also vote yes on that one. Thank you. And then second question is, does the AAC agree to approve with conditions, or not approve the 2-year temporary authorization for Simmons College? So those are our 3 options: approve with conditions, or not approve. Jenny?
Approve.
Thank you. Danny?
Approve.
Thank you. Kevin?
Approve.
Thank you. And I also vote to approve. Okay, and that is all. Congratulations, Simmons College.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we had the best committee in the world with Dr. Gibson, with Dr. Jennifer Bay Williams and Ryan McCoy, one of our local principals. And thank you all so much, and we're going to make you proud.
We're excited for you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Simmons. Good job.
Okay.
Now, so Simmons, you guys can sign out. You're good to go. Dr. Gibson, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So I have a question, Melissa, or someone, I don't know, you all know more than I do about all this. So that feels like a big deal to have like a new educator thing. Is that something that we can share publicly, or does that need to wait for a specific time period? Because that's something that, like, because I feel like as Teacher of the Year, I want to celebrate all of the different options that we can have to be educators, especially when it comes to like the recruitment of Black and brown educators, that we really just don't have as many as we need in Kentucky. So I feel like that's like a pretty big deal.
Will this be on the next board agenda for July, Melissa?
I don't know if we'll get it in July, for sure in August.
Okay.
But yeah, technically you guys have been recommending.
Yeah.
So EPSD
it won't be official.
It
won't make the July, no.
Oh, there you go, Byron.
Okay,
Byron has spoken.
Yeah, I mean, I wish
Yeah.
it would be great, but yeah.
Yeah, and August I think is fine. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess.
Byron, is that something that I feel like you're the guy here? So is that something that I like? We're gonna make sure that the communications team like does kind of a piece on or highlights, because again, that's a huge need in Kentucky. It's a huge need nationally, but I think it's a big step in Kentucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
They're about to get barraged with districts wanting to partner with them for their student teachers, and it won't just be Jefferson County.
I'm sure you're right. Yeah.
When I think the numbers they talked about in terms of diversity and for educators, Jefferson County is one of the more diverse places in Kentucky. So if they're noticing those incredibly like disproportionate numbers, I mean, speaking in my school alone, there's not a single person of color, a single teacher of color, and there's only one person of color in our entire school. And so that's very much not representative of our student populations.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
In one of the years that I was on school board, our director of HR reported to us that there were only 47 minority students in the state of Kentucky seeking their education degree in the whole state.
Wow.
So that seemed unfathomable. So hopefully their model will catch on and succeed, and
yes,
will grow.
I think that is a national trend, like as well, just working and collaborating with these other state teachers of the year, and that being such an emphasis for them. But I think it does speak to institutional barriers and honoring culture in our programs, whether that be through their experience in primary and secondary education, or that be an experience in higher education. I think both of those things need to be faced.
Yeah. Yeah, I think their plan already having a tutor, already having successes in place, supports for success in place is really smart. I think that's going to help because of those biases and those institutional hurdles that the students are going to face or already facing. The test being part of that. So smart to plan for that. So we don't have any, will the University of Louisville have, well, we have Jenny here. She's already.
Well, so since we only vote on programs, it's optional if they want to have somebody come and present.
Okay.
So I did reach out to both U of L and Murray, and they both said they're good to go.
Good. Okay.
They trust that the process will move forward. As you know, they both had CAPE accreditation, and I put their letters and stuff in the folder. They well, actually, I think they were still CAPE was still getting me letters, but they've both institutions have passed CAPE successfully, and I believe with no AFIs or stipulations.
Yeah,
so we're in a good place with both those institutions. You guys are just voting on their program approval.
So okay. So we can go ahead and move forward on the agenda then, or with them, right?
Yes, and then we'll break for lunch and then come back and finish up with one more full site visit.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so for the let's see, the University of Louisville's first, right? I just looked at yeah. Okay. For the vote sheet for the University of Louisville, we are voting for both program approval for both initial and advanced programs. So our first question is, the Program Review Committee has reviewed the program review documents for initial and advanced certification programs from the University of Louisville. The AAC makes the following recommendations on a program by program basis. Our options are approval with conditions, or denial of approval. And so for some reason, Danny's name is first on the vote sheet for this one.
I just noticed
Because
that
I'm not
Melissa
voting.
has a typo issue.
I was gonna say, and so since Jenny is obviously the interim she's not voting, so it's okay if we only have the 3 on this one. Yeah, because she's the recuser. Okay.
Yeah.
She's recusing, I guess is a better way to put that. Okay, Danny, starting with you on this one.
Approval.
Thank you. And then Kevin.
Approve.
And then Jenny has already said that she is recusing, so I will put her down there. And then I also vote for approval on the University of Louisville's programs. Okay, so we are good on that one. And then we will move to Murray. Pull that sheet up.
I mixed them up on this one too, Faye, so we can fix those later. Sorry.
It's okay. Let's see, I did. That's all right. I can put them in alphabetical order if you want. It's fine. I just thought we'd put Danny first because Kevin was brand new and was maybe like, would be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on this. Fine. Okay, Danny, let me read it, I guess, first. So same on Murray, we are voting for initial and advanced programs. They have both. The Program Review Committee has reviewed the program review documents for initial and advanced programs for Murray State University. The AAC makes the following recommendations on a program by program basis: approval with conditions, or denial of approval. Danny?
Approval.
Jenny?
Approval.
I guess we'll put you first when we go alphabetically. And Kevin?
Approval.
And I also vote for approval. So we are finished with Murray. Those are easy. Those are the easy peasy ones. Okay. I think that finishes everything up until our last institution that we will work on after lunch. Wow, we got finished. I thought that might happen actually. We might be done a little just
a little early.
Really, on the first round.
By the time you don't plan for questions and you just give 5 minutes, then there's questions.
Yes, exactly. Or a really lengthy discussion, or yes, exactly. Yeah.
So our last institution, Brushy University, I have invited their Chair of Education as well as the site visit chair can log on as early as 12:40. So that's when they're scheduled to arrive. You guys are on lunch until 12:45, obviously Eastern. So if you log in after 12:40, then they may already be in the room, just like with Simmons. So any procedural questions, anything before you head to lunch? Or
I'm thinking we'd like hang up from this call or just leave it running. Like, how does that work?
I think you can leave. I'll leave it open. Megan, I don't know. I assume we pause.
Yeah, we're gonna pause and then pick back up at 12:45.
Okay, so just leave it on the laptop.
So you can log out if you want. I will leave the meeting open and just turn my camera and my mic off. So, but I can always admit you back in, and all 4 of you need to come back.
Yes, please.
Don't ditch me after lunch.
Let's get this one done.
So,
All right, thank you.
okay. Have a good lunch.
Okay, we are going to start with introductions. So we are going to start with the committee, and I will lead off by introducing myself. I am Dr. Faye Dieters. I am the chair of the Accreditation Audit Committee, and also I serve as the current chair of the Teacher Education Department at Midway University. I am also a CAPE site lead. So I do site visits as well. And so I have been on both sides of the table for this particular process. And I'm going to move next to Jenny and let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Bay Williams. I'm at the University of Louisville, working as the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs currently. And I'm also on vacation, so looking maybe a little different than usual.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Bradley. I'm the member at large for the committee. I'm from Woodford County.
Thank you. And Kevin.
Hey y'all, I'm Kevin Daly. I'm the 2024 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and I am a middle school teacher in Boone County.
Thank you. And now I will go to the institutional representative. So Dr. Holland, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Sure, I'm Dr. Ashley Holland, and I'm the chair and associate professor here at Brescia University. I am working through my first AQUIP visit, so it's interesting.
Okay, thank you. And then Dr. Deaton, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shannon Deaton. I'm the Dean in the School of Education at University of the Cumberlands. I served as the state chair for the accreditation visit here at Brescia, and I also serve on various other CAPE site visits around the year. I've been on a dozen or so, I think, between national and state so far. And as Kevin, my background is as a middle school teacher, so very happy to be here with you all today.
Thank you. All right, now that everyone knows who everyone is, everyone knows Dr. Diebel or Diebel. I'm never sure how to say your last name, Melissa.
It's Diebel.
It's Diebel, okay.
Yeah.
Phonetically, it looks like it should be Diebel, but okay. Thank you. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and start with a presentation from Dr. Deaton as the site visit chair.
All right. Thank you so very much. And good afternoon, everyone. I guess it's not good morning anymore, as we discussed off camera here a few moments ago. So good afternoon officially. As I said, my name is Shannon Deaton, and I served as the chair for the state-only accreditation visit for Brescia University in spring 2024. Other members of the site visit team included Drs. Janine Huss, Alicia Lawrence, Robin Magruder, Lenore Kinney, and Neha Anand. The state consultants from KDE included Dr. Melissa Diebel, Dr. Byron Darnell, and Mr. Todd Davis. The team initially met in October and November of 2023 to discuss the submission of the EPP's self-study report. And during that meeting, the team identified preliminary areas for improvement and stipulations that were shared with the EPP in the formative feedback report prior to the site visit meeting. The actual site visit was conducted virtually between the dates of April 14th through the 16th of 24. The site visit schedule was organized by the EPP using a template provided by EPSB staff. And I would like to acknowledge the EPP chair, Dr. Ashley Holland, and thank her, as well as the faculty and staff at Brescia University, for virtually hosting the site visit team during the accreditation visit. Following interviews with personnel from the EPP, as well as a review of evidence presented in the addendum and new evidence that was presented on site, the site visit team identified areas for improvement and stipulations before voting on recommendations for whether CAPE standards were met or not met at the time of the visit. The team used CAPE guidance documentation to determine AFIs and stipulations, and EPSB staff provided guidance on how to determine whether standards were met or not met. Any standard having 0 or 1 stipulations or having only AFIs identified was determined to be met with 1 or more areas for improvement, and any standard having 2 or more stipulations was determined to be not met. The results for each standard are included in the site visit report and are as follows. Regarding standard 1 related to content pedagogical knowledge, the team recommended that the standard was met with 1 or more defined areas for improvement. AFIs were cited in CAPE components R1.1, R1.2, R1.3, and R1.4. Regarding standard 2, clinical partnership and practice, the team recommended that the standard was met with 1 or more defined areas for improvement. AFIs were cited in CAPE components R2.2, R2.1, R2.2, and R2.3. Regarding standard 3, candidate quality, recruitment, and selectivity, the team recommended that the standard was met with 1 or more defined areas for improvement. AFIs were cited in CAPE components R3.1, R3.2, and R3.3. Regarding standard 4, program impact, the team recommended that the standard was not met. Stipulations were cited in CAPE components R4.1, R4.2, and 4.3. Regarding standard 5, provider quality, continuous improvement, and capacity, the team recommended that the standard was not met. Stipulations were cited in CAPE components R5.1, R5.2, R5.3, and R5.4. The team recommended removal for any areas for improvement issued during previous state accreditation visits, since those AFIs were grounded in previous standards and did not align directly with current CAPE standards. The final site visit report was provided to the EPP on April 30th, and the EPP did not submit a rejoinder to the report, so that closed the cycle. In closing this report, I'd like to thank the members of the site visit team, the faculty and staff of Brescia University, as well as the members of the AAC committee. I do appreciate the opportunity to be part of this process, and at this time, I'll defer back to the AAC for questions and next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deaton. Does anyone on the AAC have any questions for Dr. Deaton at this time? Okay, doesn't look like anyone has any questions at this time for you. And so if you'll just hang on for a bit, we will go ahead and move to the institutional representative. Dr. Holland, would you like to go ahead and present for us?
Sure. First off, thank you, Dr. Deaton, for your leadership through this whole process, as well as Dr. Diebel. It's been a pleasure learning and working with both of you through this particular process. Once we received the report, the team, I think we're like many of the small institutions, we do a lot of our stuff internally and in not a formal way. And that's a lot of the feedback that we got. Even on the standards that were met, we understand that we need to formalize a lot of those areas. Looking at standard 4 and 5, particularly having not met those standards, we have been in the process since our visit, not necessarily waiting until we got the final report, but as soon as the visit was over, was how can we meet those standards, but also continue to provide information to our students, our stakeholders, to our faculty, cross-campus partners that is essential for continuing a program that is going to give our community what they need and what our students need. So we have been working on a survey for our completers also for our current students and for our stakeholders. Our programs are, I would like to say, thriving in the sense of Brescia's numbers, but compared to other institutions, we do have small numbers of students. This past year is probably the first year that we've had 10 or more completers. Coming up in this next academic year, we should have, if everything goes as planned, and students hope that they do, we will have 10 or more completers as well, so that we can use some of the data that is used from the state as well. But outside of that, we have developed a survey for our students to use internally so that we can look at that data and make program changes as well. We have also signed a contract with Watermark to use their student learning and licensure program. We think that that will also help us streamline data for us, also help us collect evaluations from our community partners, also help students track their progress from beginning to end through our programs, but it will also help us identify key assessments or signature assignments, and sometimes probably both, depending on what the course is and what we are wanting to measure for each particular course. We have also, as an institution, went to 120 credit hours, so our programs have had to be adjusted somewhat, and that has been a challenge. That has since triggered us to look at each of our programs and how we might be able to assist our students in lowering their number of required courses without taking away the importance of what they're getting once they leave our institution. We have also taken some of our current, I say current, but we've been working on updating those and making sure they are aligned. But at the time of the visit, our current evaluations and aligning those to the Danielson framework so that when students do leave our program, that they are able to make the connection from what they are doing in our classrooms and what they are going to be doing as a certified classroom teacher. That came through conversations, again, with our building administrators, our curriculum specialists, and also through some of our alumni. We don't want to put them out there and them go, I don't know what this is. We want them to be prepared when they walk into the classroom. One of the areas I know that we have struggled with, even in prior accreditation visits, was reliability of our instruments. And I think there have been some assessments that are shared amongst the state and smaller schools that we may be able to use, but also partner with as we create our new assessment tools. Excuse me. We have also updated our MOAs, or our contracts with our schools, not to just read as a letter, but to clearly identify and outline the responsibility of the classroom teacher, the building administration, the district, the student, and us here at Brescia. That has been approved by our academic dean. It is now sitting with our legal team to make sure everything is good. They told me they would have it to me soon, and I'm hoping that it's sooner than later so that we can get those out. We also have some new leadership in our local districts, so we are trying to make those connections as well. We have a new superintendent in 2 of the school districts that we primarily use here in Owensboro and Davis County. So we're building those relationships. As an overall, looking at not just standards 4 and 5, I know 5 is really about our QAS. And our goal is, as we're looking at the evaluations and doing some curriculum alignment and looking through the program from beginning to end and actually documenting that. Again, that's the downfall of having a faculty of 3, including myself, and 1 staff person, is we walk next door and say, hey, did you take a look at this? Or, hey, this seems different. Or what do we need to do with this? Identifying certain points in our academic year for us to evaluate and analyze that data. It may look a little bit different than instead of waiting a whole year. There may be some things that we look at at the end of a semester, but then it may be at the end of the academic year as well, to see how we can make changes. Our TIAC group is very active in helping us make suggestions or make changes and make those approvals. And then of course it goes through our academic or curriculum programming here at Brusha. So our QAS is starting to be redeveloped. I still think we have some really good things that we did in our QAS, but I think it needs to be more defined and stated clearly and how we're going to measure those. Another thing that we are working on is, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, revisiting. I made myself notes. Imagine that, right? We did pilot some of our assessments with the Danielson framework this spring. So that is one of our tasks when we come back in August, is to see what that looks like compared to our OAT assessment and how students scored. And also get the feedback of those that just graduated who were actually using that assessment. Excuse me. And then we are also, now that we've moved to that 120, we're not at 120 yet, but we're hoping to get there by working with our cross-campus partners, especially our content faculty in our middle school and our high school or secondary programs, to make sure that they are getting the courses that they need to be successful in their teaching certification area, but also to assist in that praxis. We do send the list of items that are going to be, or should be, I wouldn't say are going to be, should be on the praxis exam. And they give us where those classes or where that content is taught, what classes. But I think we need to revisit that in a deeper conversation with our cross-campus partners. So our goal, again, is to work on that before we start classes. In the fall, we have a week where we have to be here before classes start. So that's one of our planned days that the academic dean allows for divisions or schools to work together on their annual goals, even for Brusha, here at Brusha. Again, we're working with Watermark. We are in the implementation period. So we are setting up our date to work with myself, with our office manager, with our IT department on what their responsibilities will be, and to set up our rubrics and our assessments so that we can easily tag those to not just the national standards or the state standards or the NTI standards, but also to some of the standards that we use here just as an identifier here at Brusha. I think that will truly help us as we pull data and we can be more specific on what we are looking at in our programs and with our student performance.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Holland.
You're welcome.
Okay, do any of the committee members have questions for Dr. Holland now? Any questions for Dr. Deaton at this point? All right, sounds like we are good then and ready to vote. Our first question that we're going to be voting on is, did the site visitors follow approved guidelines when conducting the visit? Our options on that one are yes or no. And I'm going to begin with Jenny.
Yes.
Okay, Danny.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Okay, and I also vote yes on that as well. Okay, our second question that we will be voting on is, does the AAC agree with the areas for improvement or stipulations identified in the site visit report? Again, note that the AAC should consider all the subsequent evidence presented by the EPP in the rejoinder, as well as the lead response to the rejoinder. And as Dr. Deaton indicated, there wasn't a rejoinder or a response, but we also considered the EPP presentation during the AAC meeting. I'm going to be starting with Jenny on this one as well.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, Danny,
Yes, I agree.
Kevin.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to vote no on that one, but I am a lone dissenter. But my only reason for voting no on that one is that there are 2 AFIs on 2 different indicators, which I don't think we're supposed to do, but if everybody else was cool with that, then we will go with that. Okay, moving on to the next question. We are voting on standards met or not met. Standard 1, our options are yes or no. Either it's met or it's not. Yes or no. Jenny?
Sorry, I'm scrolling down through the
Oh,
AFIs to make sure that we are consistent with the guidelines. So could you, do you have the count of number of AFIs and stipulations for standard 1?
For standard 1, there are no stipulations. The areas of improvement for standard 1 are on 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4.
All right, then I'm voting met with the AFIs.
I'm sorry,
Also.
I should have gone over those met with AFIs and or stipulations and not met. Apologize. I was looking at the vote count to the right there.
I
Okay.
agree. Met with
Danny.
AFIs.
Okay, Kevin.
Met with the AFIs and stipulations.
Thank you. And I also agree, met with AFIs and or stipulations. Okay, the same thing with standard 2. Our options are met with AFIs and or stipulations, or not met.
Met
Jenny.
with, yep. Met with AFIs.
Okay, Danny.
Met with AFIs.
Okay, Kevin.
Met with AFIs.
And I also agree, met with AFIs and or stipulations. Okay, standard 3, same options, met with AFIs and or stipulations, or not met. Jenny.
Met with AFIs.
Okay, Danny.
Met with AFIs.
Kevin.
Met with AFIs.
And I also agree, met with AFIs and or stipulations. Okay, standard 4, met with AFIs and or stipulations, or not met. Jenny.
Not met.
Not met. Okay, Danny.
I would have said met with AFIs and or stipulations.
Okay, Kevin.
Not met due to more than one stipulation for that standard.
Okay, and I would also vote not met on that one. And standard 5, met with AFIs and or stipulations, or not met. Jenny.
Not met. Not met.
Okay, not met. Danny.
Not met.
Kevin.
Not met.
And I also vote not met on that one as well. Okay, for our accreditation decision, our options are accreditation with conditions, and we would specify the conditions that we would recommend, or accreditation with probation.
Hey, Faye, I just wanted to clarify, accreditation with conditions cannot have stipulations.
Cannot have stipulations.
So because there are stipulations, we can't actually do accreditation with conditions. We can only do accreditation with probation.
Okay, accreditation or accreditation.
Yeah,
I was wondering.
It does say with conditions, they can have no stipulations. So,
okay.
And then revocation can only happen after
right.
a probation.
That's not
period.
an option, right?
Yes.
So, but I'm sorry. You're saying that accreditation with conditions is an option, but we don't specify the conditions?
Well, we can't do conditions because there were stipulations. So the
Correct.
only option we
It's
have is
accreditation or probation.
accreditation or accreditation with probation because of
Okay.
stipulations.
Right, because we did vote on stipulations. Got it. Right. Okay, sorry. So our options are accreditation or accreditation with probation. Now, was there somebody was getting ready to ask another question?
I was just going to ask,
So
do we have to explain the conditions of the probation if that is the vote?
It's actually the EPSB that sets the parameters of that, not the AAC.
Correct. Yeah, so we don't specify.
and then denial is not an option.
No, because a EPP has to be on probation before they are denied
I understand.
accreditation.
So I got you.
Okay, so we will go ahead and vote. So accreditation and accreditation with probation are our two options. So Jenny,
Accreditation with probation.
okay, Danny,
Accreditation with probation.
Kevin,
Accreditation with probation.
and I also vote for accreditation with probation. Okay, and our last item will be for our programs. The program committee has reviewed the program review documents for initial certification programs for Brescia. The AAC makes the following recommendation on a program by program basis. And on the programs, now we do have approval with conditions, or denial of approval, correct, Melissa?
Correct. Yeah, and you
Okay.
can set the conditions on this one.
On the approval with conditions, yes. Okay.
So
So
the distinction here is that this is the program by program information. And this was also related to the letter that was in the file from KDE about the program by program having met the legislation things. Is that correct?
correct.
Dr.
Correct.
Diebel? Okay.
Okay. Jenny,
So I think my vote here, if I'm understanding this correctly, is approval with conditions. And I don't know if you want more details now or we vote and then we discuss.
yeah, we can go ahead and vote and then we'll discuss. Okay, approval with conditions. Okay, Danny,
Okay, that's an odd way to do it, I think, because approval with conditions, if we all vote that way, and then the conditions aren't the same, is the vote.
I think you guys have a discussion of what the conditions are. And so after you set the conditions, if you want to, I think Faye can call for a vote of confirmation of those conditions.
Okay, approval with conditions. Thank you.
okay, yeah. Kevin,
Approval with conditions.
okay. And I also agree with approval with conditions. Okay, since we all agree that there should be approval with conditions, then we will discuss what those conditions should be. So what are you thinking? What are your suggestions for conditions so far?
So I'm going to say something kind of globally, and we don't find ourselves in this circumstance very often with basically an AFI in every single standard, but it raises concern about every single program, especially in standard 1 and standard 2, which is about the quality of the efforts to meet the standards and have the quality field experiences. So I don't know how to connect that. Like Danny was saying, it's a tricky thing to connect, but those AFIs related, in the first 3 standards, even though, the other vote was that they were met because they met the, the guidelines or whatever.
Right.
It seems like the condition would be that specific efforts are made, related to each of the AFIs, and the review committee's done a really nice job of explaining what's not there and what needs to be there. So I'm wondering if we can just kind of make a statement to go back to the, committee who's done this hard work, and looked so carefully at the materials to have a global condition that the AFIs are attended to. And I appreciate Dr. Holland speaking to some of the things today, but some of that language was very tentative, I'm going to say. You know, here's some things we might do, whatever. But today would have been the day to have already, you know, completed that work, getting ready for accreditation. So I feel it's important to have a condition in place that those efforts are seen through. So that's where my brain is at.
Danny, did you want to add something? Okay.
No, I agree with that completely. And I think that the number of AFIs, some that were addressed and some less so, make it hard for us as an overview type board to identify those conditions. I agree. I would appreciate any direction that Dr. Diebel might have on that, or kind of a place to go to consolidate those to help Brescia in the most effective way.
And Jenny, can I just clarify, when you say the team, are you talking about the site visit team, or are you talking about the program review committee?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to go back and think who authored these different pieces. But the one that's the final report, that's
Are
the
you
site
talking about
visit
from
report?
their site visit?
From the site visit, which is
Okay,
the final
so,
one.
Yeah,
right?
with the site visit team, I don't think we can reconvene them. They've done their duty, and they can, I guess, choose to, like, I could email them and see if they would choose to follow up. But you can have, the institution can follow up with EPSB staff. They can follow up with the AAC. So you guys can have a check-in if you want to do that. So, but I don't know that we can task the site visit committee because they've already done their job and we've like said thank you. And
okay, so let me restate the chart that's in our vote document. That chart came from the site visit team.
yes.
So what I'm simply saying is those suggestions, those things there are the template for Brescia to be able to say, here's this thing, and now here's our evidence. Here's this thing, now here's our evidence. I mean, the reason they're on probation is because they haven't met 2 standards. But quite frankly, all 5 standards need to show growth. So what I'm recommending is that at a program level, they show attention to the AFIs that are documented in this chart.
Okay.
And so they could submit that to you all.
So yeah, we could request that a report be submitted annually to the AAC, for example.
Correct.
So either at the December meeting or at the June meeting. Correct, Melissa?
Yes, and we can add, you can do, if you wanted, you know, to put a condition, they could meet in the December meeting and then come again in June. I mean, it's up to you all. It's your agenda, so we can add a place of where they update in any of the meetings you want. And then the revisit will take place in 2 years with a new team. So
it's, yeah, would you prefer 6 months, you know, updates every 6 months to see how they're doing and progressing on each of those standards, since as we discussed, there are AFIs and they are of particular concern related to program review around standards 1 and 2, not just 5, which 5 and 4 are the standards that are not met. And those obviously will be the target of the visit in 2 years, correct, Melissa? Those unmet standards.
The EPSB can make a decision to do a full visit again on every standard. But the minimum requirement is that we will check in that visit on only standards 4 and 5.
Right. That's what I thought. And so it could be that is what they will choose to do, check in on standards 4 and 5. But for us, for program review, standards 1 and 2 obviously are important as well. So we might want those reports to see how they're coming along at 6 months intervals in that 2-year period.
I think that would be what I would be comfortable with. I think that also gives Dr. Holland time to get some feedback from the other stakeholders that she's waiting for, and may have some more clarity and information to provide them.
The other option is it doesn't have to be a presentation. There could also be a written report that could be submitted and sent to you all, and a follow-up Q&A could be done in a meeting. So it's up to you all, how you want to collect that data and how you want to, I guess, just discuss that. So it could be written, it could be, you have a lot of, there's no, like, it's totally open to what you guys would want.
I personally need a written copy so I can really reflect on it, compare back to the documents that are in this folder and see progress made. I won't be able to do that as I'm listening in a meeting.
Yeah, I think that's.
I would give Dr. Holland the opportunity to weigh in on whether or not she would like to do that in person as well as in written form. If you have a preference on that, I know some things, are more easily discussed like this than on paper, but I agree with Jenny on that as well.
Thank you. I personally would, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I would like to submit something written, but also have something to where if you have a question, if you need clarity, to ask as well.
I would be the same way. So I'm.
Also, I think
what we could do is do that written report and then send it to you all, and you can say, yes, we need her to come to answer questions, or no, the written report. So you could still make that decision if what she submits. And like Jenny said, I think, Jenny, if I'm picturing this the way you're describing it, we would just have the AFI stipulations on one side, and she would write to each one of those and add any additional evidence.
Right. Or they could be a header and then, whatever, and then the next header, but it would be by each of the stipulations. And sometimes, having worked on this just last year, within that standard, within that comment, there's like 3 things that are mentioned. So each of those can be like a header, because that makes it very easy for us to look and see, oh yeah, here's the efforts they've done on this, here's the progress they've made. Right. And in turn, Dr. Holland, I think this actually attends to standard 5, because it's showing the 4 and 5, they're sort of work together, but it gives you that continuous improvement. And I think Dr. Diebel mentioned, having the partners involved, and then you've got standard 3 in there. So like in attending to standards 1 and 2 in terms of the program specific areas for improvement, that as you're working on improving those, then your system is engaged, and that addresses that concern that there is a QAS, but there's no evidence that it's been enacted. So that would be my, and I'm not an expert on this like Dr. D is, but coming, from my perspective, I think that would be beneficial, having this 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, because then you're ready in 2 years, your system has been engaged. And so then 4 and 5 are, up and running.
Would you want this, would she write, just to clarify, because it says program by program. Mm-hmm. Would you want this to be an overall writing for that, or do you want her to discuss program by program? I just want to make sure we clarify. They're small schools, so a lot of their programs are probably, and Dr. Holland jump in if this is, but a lot of their programs are using probably very similar things. But it does say program by program, so I just want to make sure we clarify how you want her to write about that overall, program by program.
And some of our programs only have one student in them, and probably in the last 5 years has only had one student in them. So I know that there's one that I think is up for discussion with our curriculum and with our board that has only had one student since I've been here. So, and then I think with the data, we combine like our middle school all into middle school. We have special ed, and our numbers are not always supportive of what data that we feel that we can look at and do that in a fair manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like for what I was thinking is there's sort of a there's this way that you can say, in all of our programs, we do field experiences this way. And then if there's something, Dr. Holland, that's an exception, you can say the one exception is this program where we do it this other way.
Right.
So please don't list every single program and tell us the same thing over and over and over again. Just say all of them do this, all of them do that, and especially if these programs have few students in them, they probably have a lot of shared courses. So, you know, you can say all students take this course and here's this assessment we do in this course or whatever it is. And if there's a program that doesn't take that course, you can say the exception, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like in attending to each program, you can still just be talking about every program with a single piece. And that's from what I've read across your reports, I feel like you do have those common courses and common things you're doing. So you just have to attend to each of those AFIs. But definitely you don't need like a table with every single program and how you're doing it, because I imagine that would be copy paste, copy paste, copy paste.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we don't need to see that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I also have a really small program, and that totally makes sense to me.
I mean, we have a large program and we still have common courses for this reason, because we really want to track our students efficiently. So.
Okay, now let me just make sure that we covered everything on the vote sheet. Yes, we did. So I think that specifies the conditions. So the conditions will be a report for the AAC committee to be provided prior to the committee meeting each 6 months. And then with the opportunity for Dr. Holland or the institutional representative to be present to answer questions should that be needed. So something like
Dr.
that.
Dieters,
Mm-hmm.
is there, how much time would the committee like? Because I think it might be easier
That's
if we
what I
just
was
set the
gonna say.
date. Okay.
That's what I
So
was going to say. How
we
far
right
in
now-
advance of that meeting?
So right now our meeting is December 10th, just to give everybody a reminder. And so how long you would need, and then I can back it up and tell you what day that is.
I would say at least 3 weeks if possible.
Yes, I was going to say at least 2 or 3 weeks. So that sounds good to me. 3 weeks.
That's kind of a crazy time of the year too. So
3 weeks. 3 weeks to the date would be November 19th would be when the first report would be due. So we would add that to the conditions. Then the report would be November, due November 19th by close of business or 5 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Central.
Melissa, can I ask a question of you? As we start the semester, I mean, I can create it, but I know that you share and move a lot of things through the Google Docs files. Is that something that you could go ahead and create for us so that I could start
Absolutely.
dropping things in?
What I'll do is when we're done with the AAC meeting, I will actually start working on a draft. I will send it to the AAC committee first to make sure that it captures what you guys are looking for. You know, Faye typed out what that was. I don't have that written out there exactly, but then I will get that to you we'll put it in your Google Drive as soon as possible.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that was everything, Ben.
Danny, are you good with the conditions, or did you want Faye to check with
I
you
don't know,
guys?
Faye, do you want to read back through it to see if everyone is happy with what you've noted?
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty rough right now. So the conditions, so it's approval with conditions. The conditions are that the EPP will provide a written report 3 weeks prior to the Accreditation Audit Committee meeting each 6 months. And I will add in there, it will be submitted by close of business 3 weeks, Eastern Time, close of business 3 weeks prior to the AAC meeting each 6 months. And it's on standards 1 and 2 specifically. Correct? Is that all right? I'll word it better, I promise. And with the opportunity for the EPP representative to appear to answer questions at the AAC meeting should the need arise.
Do we want it to be narrowed to just standards 1 and 2, or any additional information on progress with AFIs addressed in the other standards?
Do you want all 5? Do you want I mean, we can do all 5 if you want. Since it's program approval, I was thinking that originally Jenny had mentioned standards 1 and 2 specifically, but we certainly could open it up to allow for the EPP to address anything that they wanted to regarding to those other standards as well.
So one sort of, this is just a pondering I had thinking about not overwhelming the institution, but also thinking about the stipulations in standard 4 and 5. Is this having the data gathering in place so that you gather your data, like 2 years will go by in a minute. So it could be helpful, but what would be reasonable by November to have in terms of data? So I don't have a sense of what data was in place this spring, what data plan was in place this spring to have data to report in December, but perhaps a condition is that by our June meeting next year, that there is data to report as an effort to just scaffold this need to meet that goal 2 years from now. But it's one of my questions, because gathering, like years of data means first making sure you know what that data is. Anyways, I'm not sure, but I was thinking the program by program stuff is mostly in standards 1 and 2. I mean, standard 4, yes, but that's again that data, like are the systems in place? And it doesn't look like from what I read that they're in place yet.
I think it's fine then to leave it broad and say that we would like for them to specifically address standards 1 and 2, and they're welcome to share any additional information that they would like. That way, like you said, it's giving them the flexibility to report anything that they may have addressed or found data to support, but it's also not requiring it within a unreasonable time frame.
And Dr. Holland had her hand up a second ago.
No, that's okay. You've answered that question. If I could include information around the other standards, because I know that some of it is going to overlap in some of the standards.
Okay, so I will amend it then to specify that the written report will focus on standards 1 and 2, but that the EPP may also share additional information relative to standards 3 through 5 should they wish to do so, and their progress on those standards as well.
Okay.
I just have one general comment. It's around this notion of collaboration across institutions and as quote unquote, especially small programs, but I just want to say it's a larger program, although of course we're all pretty small right now. We have a teacher shortage happening, but that this collaboration is really critical, especially in light of new legislation. And so I hope that we will have forums where Ashley doesn't have to go to everybody's website and figure out who she's trying to reach out to at each institution. These roles change, that sort of thing. And not just Ashley, by the way, because earlier today we heard other people with the same wish. And I have that same wish. if somebody has an awesome dispositions assessment that they're using, we want to know about it, that sort of thing. So I don't know what the form is for that. Is it KACTE? Is it some other way to facilitate that kind of collaboration? It's just a question that I have in general. And so I don't know, Melissa, Dr. Diebel, if you want to speak to that, or Dr. Dieters.
I know that CACTE does have those conversations, but I since I've started the literacy group and the numeracy group, we have a lot of interest in people getting together to have these conversations. And with the program review process, continued program review process changing, I think the thing that most people have liked about it is the conversations that occur in that process. So I think that there definitely is something that I've had a lot of people talking about, so I could see it maybe being something that we could grow into, having some more monthly forums or things like that. But so far it's been reliant on CACTE. But I think too, and I think Byron would say this too, we have such a limited staff that sometimes it's hard to get all of everybody wants their own group. So, but it's exciting that everybody wants to get together and talk. So,
yeah, I
it's
will
a good
say,
problem to have.
yeah, I will say this too. A long time ago, when I was at Alice Lloyd College as the division director there, and this was long time ago, before EKU and ECU and all the other places before I got to Midway. We met much more frequently, as we had a meeting of all the privates, the deans and directors and all of that of the private institutions monthly. And that was really helpful when I was division head of Alice Lloyd. And then we also had a meeting that included everybody. I remember this is how I met Sam when he was at Western, and all the folks. And that was helpful as well, because we could talk about like the bigger projects and things when we were trying to work on instruments that everybody would use across the state and that sort of thing. And I guess everybody just got so busy that those went by the wayside. But I think something like that is what we need now. Because CACTE, we get together now every 2 months or so when we are at the EPSB board meetings, and then in the summer for our conference. And it seems like we just don't have enough time. We have so much to do at all of that there's really not enough time to talk about these things like instruments, because we've talked before, like we need an observation instrument that we can use, that would be common amongst us, different institutions that we could use and that we could establish validity on and that sort of thing. And it's just something that we've talked about a lot, but we've never actually had time to work on that. But I wish that we could do something like that. It would be really helpful. And even when I was at EKU, like you said, Jenny, we were a big program. But even there, I was like, I wish we could do this.
I mean, whether
somebody get us some
you're giving
grant
a
money.
dispositions assessment to one person, 10 people, or 1,000 people, you still need to have a reliable, valid instrument.
Exactly.
Well, I think the other side of it, and I'll send an email out. The people that go to CACTE are not necessarily people that do the accreditation and the program review pieces. Those sometimes are just different people. And so that's often what I hear is, well, I know my dean goes to CACTE, but I do accreditation. I need to be part of that conversation. So, I can throw another group in the mix. My groups are my favorite part.
And Melissa, I want to add, sometimes they are separate people, but sometimes they're the same person that's teaching a full course load, that is doing the observation, that's doing accreditation, that's serving on committees, that's working in the community, that's doing all of this. And just as much as you all, the state doesn't have enough staff, our institutions, our numbers, our students are down, but our responsibility, because our ability to rehire positions are not, I shouldn't say not supported, but it's just not there. So, Dr. Dieters picks up additional course loads or responsibilities. So it's a double-edged sword. I really think it's a double-edged sword. And as much as I think we all believe in our programs, there's only so much of me and only so much of this person to be able to do that.
It is very true.
Some institutions are different people, but sometimes I think if I went to every meeting in Frankfurt. I would be in Frankfurt more than I would be here at Brescia. And then I couldn't teach my classes. So, that becomes a challenge.
It is a challenge, but I do wish we could get some support at the state level to develop some instruments. I've been on site visits in states where they've done just that. And those states are doing really well, where they've shared instruments statewide that, everybody is using. And it's very,
And
very
I do
helpful.
think
I'm
I
jealous.
do think
when
we will start moving towards that a little bit, because as Jenny knows, we have a rubric for observations and student teachers that I think will could become universal for people that want to use it. And not to put Jenny on the spot, but I know they're also developing some pretty cool tools at U of L that we maybe can talk her into presenting or sharing different things. So I know there's definitely something there. And one of, I think, the best things that I've gotten from my AQUEP meetings is they do cross-state conversations every month. And so I get to jump in with other state people and hear what they're doing and take it back, and they hear what I'm doing. And so, and it's not actually about accreditation. Sometimes it's about all different topics, which is nice. So no, I've been thinking about getting a group going that kind of would fall under, accreditation and all things in that arena. And so, we can definitely, if I think the question has always been, if they're doing state only, I do it. But if you're doing national, would you want to be a part of that group? But I'm getting the impression that yes, no matter how you're doing it, you'd like to be a part of that.
It doesn't matter if you're doing state or national, you still have to have valid and reliable instruments, right?
Absolutely.
Well, but I would say, I think we're only interested if it has a very complicated acronym to go along with it.
Yes.
Otherwise, I personally.
Well, our literacy work, we're looking at some different ways of putting together some common ideas concerning literacy practices and really talking across the state, what are the minimum standards for students leaving any program concerning literacy and science of reading. And then also we're going to start having those conversations about numeracy. And, because no matter what school you go to, there should be a minimum level understanding of certain pedagogy and content, that sort of thing. So guys, watch out. This committee's going to be meeting all the time now.
Can we add an agenda item in December so it doesn't just fall off our radar, to be thinking about putting some statewide structures into place for collaboration or like a repository is kind of what you were talking about. We are working on right now on a dispositions assessment. And what we've done is we've got online and seen what Western's doing and Eastern and all the places. And then we collapsed them all together. And I have an assessment person because I'm a larger institution. So I have that resource. And so we've been vetting it. We've been doing the Laushi, and which I didn't know what that was a year ago. But we've done Laushi. And now we're in round 2 of that. And when we're done, we're going to have a cool instrument that we would love to have others use if it fits, your program and your needs, right? So I just think other people are doing cool stuff. I have no way of knowing what that is. So having a repository or an opportunity to exchange, things like that, I think would be really helpful.
I will send out an email, although I can't say that it necessarily is the task of this committee. So I don't know that we can put it on our agenda in that way.
Okay,
but
that's fine.
I can throw it out there just, and of course this committee is welcome to talk about it. I think we also need to talk about, 5010 and, just kind of the language that surrounds this committee, and kind of maybe you guys can be the catalyst of, these are some changes we think need to happen with this, work as well. So I appreciate how excited you guys are. And
Jeannie,
all right, Jenny, I'll start another
Did you
group.
look at the one that CACT worked with Ronaldo and Cher Niagara, that dispositional assessment too? When you did yours? You didn't? Because that's the one we're using at Midway.
Oh.
But that came out of CACT. EKU, we didn't use it because they weren't fast enough and we needed ours because we were going through accreditation. But at Midway, we're using the one that we did with CACT with them. So I can send it to you though.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, wait,
Thank you so much.
you
Oh,
have to close
I'll
the
wait for you.
sorry.
meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. We have to do the adjournment and all that
Yeah,
stuff
you have
officially
you have
after.
to make it official.
That's right.
I move
Okay.
that we adjourn the meeting.
We need a second.
I second.
All right. All in favor? Hi.
Aye.
Melissa, do you want me to stay on for just a minute so we can talk about sending you the documents?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
And Megan, we can go offline.